Good afternoon. The American Society is so honored to have with us today two amazing filmmakers, Alexandria Hammond, a Mexican-American director and producer based in New York City and Mexico City, who's worked, New York City and Mexico City, who's worked in film and TV for the past 12 years as a director, producer, editor, and cinematographer. And Ian Markowitz, an American filmmaker and writer from New York City, who has specialized in documentary and film production for over a decade. Together, they created this amazing film, Lucha Mexico. Lucha Mexico was released theatrically and digitally by Kino Lorber in the United States and featured on Netflix worldwide. It played at film festivals all over the world, including the Guanajuato Film Festival and Ambulante Documentary Festival. It continues to be shown in Mexico, where the lucha libre is such a large part of the culture. We are excited that today is our first live webinar in a series of lucha libre events we have planned for you at the American Society of Mexico. Alex and Ian, thank you so much for being here with us today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We're so thrilled. Thank you for inviting us, and so we could talk about our experience with making the film and talk about Mexico and our love for Mexico.
Thank you so much. So would you mind, we're going to basically do this in an interview style. I hope that's okay with you. Ask you some questions, and great, thanks. So would you mind telling us a little bit about yourselves first?
You want to start?
No.
So, well, I grew up in Connecticut, and I studied film. I went to film school, went to Cal Arts, also NYU. And I lived in New York for a big part of my the last 15 years. And in the process, I've made several documentaries, several features, two which Ian and I collaborated on, Lucha Mexico and one before. And in the process of making Lucha, we fell in love with Mexico, and we decided to spend more time living in Mexico City. So we currently are spending like half the year in Mexico City and half the year in the US. But we're working on film projects here. And we're very excited about actually having that work experience in this country. It's been interesting to say the least.
And Ian?
Yeah, I think that we have a similar thing in that we both grew up loving movies and going to film school and doing all that. And when I was at NYU, we were at NYU at different times, funny enough, but we both went there. And I ended up at the end of NYU, I started working for Albert Maysles, who's a major documentary filmmaker, like kind of one of the pioneers. And that just sort of snowballed into a big thing. But after that, we've made a couple things together. And then, we've been also working on separate stuff kind of in Mexico and a lot of different projects. So it's sort of like, one thing creates the next thing, it just sort of rolls along.
That's so great. So can I ask why the lucha libre as the topic for this film?
Well, Ian will start because it was his love for it first, but I'll tell you how I fell in love with it.
Well, she can tell you how it became lucha libre, I guess, because my whole thing was that I wanted to make a film about wrestling that showed maybe more an authentic side of it. Most wrestling documentaries tend to focus exclusively on the negative and on something bad, and bad things happen, of course, because it's life, but there's more to life than that, right? And that's true in wrestling. And wrestling's really interesting. It's a really unique kind of sport or form of entertainment. And so I had planned to do something, and I wanted to include lucha libre in that. And I was actually we were working on something else on another project, and I was showing her like, oh, you'd be interested in this, I think, a little bit. This is something I'm thinking of doing something with, and it took on a life of its own.
Well, yeah, one thing I know you said in the intro, but my mother's Mexican, and so I've spent a lot of time in Mexico, mainly in the summers, going back and forth. And when you're picking a new documentary or any kind of project, you have to, first of all, be obsessed with it because documentary takes so long. And so when Ian first talked about this wrestling idea, I said, that's great, because he had a very big passion for it. But I was still in this process of thinking of making this film about bullfighting, and I wanted to make something in Mexico. But when this arose, I said, oh my goodness, this is sort of like bullfighting, but it's a subject that I don't know anything about. My mother never exposed it to me. I always thought of it as probably campy in a way, but it was really until I saw a match and I said, like, this is incredible. Like, I've never seen this kind of spectacle in my life, you know, very different from US wrestling. And we could definitely tell there was a subject here to explore and to spend time and see what this world is about, really.
Sure. And so did the film bring you to Mexico, or you feel like Mexico brought you the
No.
Yeah, it's both.
Well, yeah, we had to be here for it, of course, right? And we would like rent Airbnbs. We would stay in hotels, cheap hotels, because we had to be here for like a month at least at a time, you know, to get in the world. And you were here. Well, there was some family that we had that helped us, my godparents, and helped us. We stayed with them. We rented apartments, but anyway, it drew us in, and we kept coming back. And we spent 5 years really making.
But I mean, Lucha Libre is a thing that permeates a lot of the Mexican culture. So if you are plugged into that and you're going to spend time with it, there are a lot of people who come here and they don't. They go to the Arena Mexico and they, you know, think that they can be there a few days and they've got a film or they've got some insightful thing. And generally that's not true, because Lucha's a lot bigger than that. And so it ends up introducing you to, I think, a pretty good cross-section of the Mexican culture. And it takes you to different places that you might not explore on your own if you're willing to go with it. So it definitely showed us more than we ever thought we would find. And in doing that, it I think created an even greater love for Mexico, you know, that's well outside of Lucha. You know, Lucha's now just like this little piece of that, whereas Mexico is, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You fell in love.
Well, yeah, I mean, you do, though. You
Yeah.
do. When you're immersed that way, you become part of it somehow.
Sure. And so let's talk a little bit about how you guys got started on the film. So you had the idea, you knew you had to come to Mexico. You know, who did you know? How did you really break into this very, very private sport? Because my understanding is, well, from you guys, that it is a very, very private sport. So how did they let you in order to do this film?
Yeah, absolutely. It's really private. It actually started through, we met someone actually at my sister's wedding in Mexico who we brought up the idea. We were already writing to people and people were like, okay, come, but it was very difficult to connect in that moment. And we got a connection through a Mexican man who helped us first like get in one door, which was AAA. And it was really wonderful because Carlos, this man, he made a phone call. And so we went in and we spoke to one of the companies. There's several companies in Mexico. The big one is Consejo Mundial de Lucha Libre. And then there's AAA, and then there's all these independent little companies. So that's actually what opened up the world at first. If you don't mind me just saying one thing about this, because it was interesting. Like we got in there and we started going to shows. We're like, this is going to be so easy. And then all of a sudden it was like the door was kind of closed because they thought, oh, we're just going to come shoot one show, which that's what many people go and do, like reporters, journalists. They didn't realize we were like, we want to make something super intimate and we want to know the ins and outs. And they were like, that's enough. And so then we were stuck, you know, so we had to figure out something else, which took, you can if you want.
No, I mean, we weren't, I'm sorry.
What was that something else? What did you do then?
The thing is that like, we weren't giving up. We were maybe, you know, we weren't annoying, but we were definitely persistent. And the thing for us was like, we recognized how much there was to explore. So we knew that there were other angles we could go at. And to be honest, when I started out having an interest in coming down here, I wanted to go to Consejo Mundial because they're the original, they're the classic. And they're like, you know, that's like going to the WWE in the US. They're the old ones. They had all the famous wrestlers. And, you know, we kind of started going to shows and approaching a lot of people there and kind of introducing ourselves and who we were and what we wanted to do. And over a little bit of time, some people kind of said, okay, you know, yeah, all right, we'll give you a bit of a chance. And it was a period of proving ourselves. We would come in and we would bring our equipment and, you know, you sit there for hours and you wait until they let you shoot something. And then the next time it's a little easier and a little easier, but this is not something that happened overnight. It's something where we had to kind of become part of it for a while. But then in that, we also started to become friends with some of the wrestlers who would be like, well, listen, you know, maybe at the arena, you can't shoot all the time because that's a big show that's on TV. Whereas you can come to this other show that might be on TV, but it's a little smaller, and then we'll go to this private event, and then we're going to go to this other city, and then, and you start just becoming integrated.
Great. So it evolved definitely over time as you were here and meeting people. That's amazing. And do you feel as American filmmakers working in Mexico, do you feel that you were, welcomed? How was it working in Mexico as Americans?
Really, like everything in the beginning, at first, there's a challenge in the sense that, I think I think Consejo Mundial especially, at first they were like, who are you guys? You're not part of a big network.
Right.
We came in as independent filmmakers and we started showing our work. Ian had made a lot of music documentaries and made a documentary about Paul McCartney, and our main contact at Consejo Mundial, she was the biggest diehard Paul McCartney fan. So I have to say it started from
Yeah, maybe that came
and she was like, I love Paul McCartney. And so she really opened the door. I have to say, Sandra Granados, I give her credit, this woman who was in marketing at Consejo, she really let us in, and so working with them ultimately was wonderful. And
and also to her credit, she understood what we were doing. So she was able to explain to them and to kind of help, not just facilitate, but to sort of create an environment where we could work in our way. It was different from what they might get from a journalist or from a TV crew. Because when we were there, they were shooting reality TV. And she knew what we were doing was different, and she didn't try and, she was like, let's not make this a conflicting thing. Let's continue this, the process. And so we really have to give her a lot of credit for that. And yeah.
But again, like just to say the ad about the experience, and they once they saw that we were committed and again kept seeing us there, they recognized us. We've developed the friendships, with this arena where we knew the acomadores, which are the men and women who seat you at the seats, to the guy that sells the Coke, to the security guard. We became friends with like that whole world. And so it was fun. And, we felt like just part of it. Right. And then what was the challenge was that at one point, and we'll talk, I don't know if you want to go into it, but it's just that we wanted to show all the other companies, the independent wrestlers, that this is not just this little world. This is a massive cultural phenomenon that is only unique to Mexico, right? It's all over every part of Mexico, to a little pueblo, to, you'll find a Lucha Libre show everywhere. Like at a church, you'll find it, every weekend you'll find a show in some neighborhood. So it doesn't have to be in a big arena. It could be in these little places. And that's what we learned. We're like, we need to show it all. And that was our kind of goal ultimately. We were like, let's not just follow one wrestler. Let's try to make this like the ultimate Lucha Libre movie. That was ultimately what we wanted to do.
That's great. So I don't know if we can, if it'd be okay with you, we're going to share a couple of photos, and maybe we're going to talk a little bit about some of the luchadores. Of course,
Sure.
Only a few that are featured in the film, but just because of lack of time. So
great.
Okay, perfect. I'm going to go ahead and so what I'll do is I'm going to show the photos, and maybe as I scroll through, you can go ahead and talk freely and tell us a little bit about the luchadores. Okay.
Well, that one just quick. Well, back to I only bring it up because Arcangel in the middle, that was at the Guanajuato Film Festival. And he was one of the teachers that teaches Lucha Libre. To be a luchador, you have to go to school for Lucha Libre. And he was a lovely man who also wrestled, and he wore a mask. He was called Arcángel de la Muerte, like Archangel of Death.
Yeah.
And he came to a lot of festivals with us. And sadly, he passed away a couple years ago, but he had a heart attack. So we miss him, but he was very supportive.
Oh, that's nice. Okay.
You want to talk about Blue?
Well, listen, Blue Demon Jr. is one of the biggest names in wrestling. People know him around the world. And also, he's one of the people who really got what we were trying to do and understood the value of it, because he's a legacy guy. His father is Blue Demon and passed that down and has been part of media. They really understand it. And he's been very supportive, and he's just, he's a great guy to work with. And I'd like to add that you know, he continues to wrestle and continues to carry the legacy on, which is great.
Well, wait, I want to say one thing about Blue Demon, if you don't mind. He's an independent wrestler. He doesn't work for any company but himself. He's a masked wrestler that we've never seen his face. He's one that wears his mask 18 hours a day if he's out and about. And he gets to have this double life, right? He can take off his mask and be somewhere no one will know who he is. And so that's part of what the mystique of that, of the mask with him. And we refused to see his face. We said, please never show us your face.
That's incredible.
Right? Like we didn't.
No, that's true. He's the only one. You know,
Yeah.
El Hijo de Paraguayo. You know, the thing is that he's also technically a legacy wrestler. His father was the generation that came after Blue Demon and Santo and those guys, and introduced a harder edge to wrestling in kind of the 70s and 80s, and he was a huge wrestler. And so his son El Hijo de Paraguayo was starting off his own independent company. He had been with Consejo Mundial. He had been with AAA briefly, I think, but he had made a name for himself and was starting his own company. The idea being that this was going to be hardcore wrestling, where they fight and the matches are bloody. They're more adult. They're not for kids. You know, they would use things like light bulbs and thumbtacks, and they would hit each other with chairs regularly. I mean, it was crazy. And to run around the ring shooting these guys, I have to say, was sometimes you felt like, even as a camera person, it could be dangerous. But unfortunately, you know, he lived really kind of on the edge in a lot of ways, and he's one of the few wrestlers who actually died in the ring as a result directly of, you know.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing people
tragedy.
don't. It is a real tragedy because he was a talent, an insane talent, charismatic. You know, he's only 36. He'd been in the world his whole life. Like Ian said, his father was a very famous wrestler, and it is really tragic because people think, oh, it's a show, it's fake, it's all this. I mean, what he was doing was very extreme, so it was on that edge. But this is very, very sad. Like, it's just, I feel like he had so much more, you know, like legacy to do.
And it was an accident in the actual show where he died, not practicing or anything like that?
No, it was in an actual show. They were in Tijuana, and yeah, it was just a freak thing. That's, you know, yeah.
Wow.
Ah, que bonito. He's like so much fun. He's the mascot of CMLL, and so basically he's like a little guy, and in Lucha there's a lot of comedy and it's a lot a family event. And so he's 56 now. He has kids that are luchadores as well. They're minis. They call them minis. And he doesn't wrestle. He's more like they say, the mascot of the Consejo Mundial. And he shows up with the good guys, and he brings laughter. And unfortunately, also, he's been injured as well because they throw him around the ring. It's a little crazy. But he brings that part of the humor to it.
No, I mean, you know,
this is funny.
This is pretty typical of what he does, is that he goes in and it'll always be like a kind of fake challenge. And then, I mean, I hate to say, but he gets a little bit beat up. Although, you know, he is a good sport about it, and he's talked about it without any regret. He actually has said that, you know, this has been one of the most incredible experiences he could have ever hoped to have. So anybody who feels bad for him, he doesn't feel bad for himself.
Wow. That's incredible.
Sexy star. She's wonderful. She's also a big part of not a huge part of the film, but she's someone who became a very supportive person in our film. And she, you know, she's a masked wrestler, of course, and she has this bad side. Like, she's a ruda. So there's two parts to lucha. There's the good guys and the bad guys. She's a ruda. And she became very famous while we were making this, but what was Underground? What was it called? The show?
Lucha Underground.
Oh, Lucha Underground, which is a huge show with
it was produced by Robert Rodriguez. But
yeah.
it's a AAA, and the company TNA was in the US. It's a co-production. It's basically an American show that featured Lucha Libre, primarily Lucha Libre stars, and it actually was very big in the US for a few years, and she was one of the bigger stars.
But this is backstage. This is really fun because we got to be with her in the back, and they're all religious in a way. They all have their sort of method of what they do before they go out in the ring. She let us in a little. Again, most don't really let you in that side. It's too private. So this was a rare moment we had with her.
Amazing.
Well, that's in the film.
Yeah, that's in the film. Yeah.
Yeah.
And she's wrestling, but not as much. She's switching over to boxing now. So she's trying to evolve. I mean, she's a businesswoman. She has been sponsored by many brands. So she's always trying to find that next thing. So she's been in boxing. What's the other hardcore MMA?
MMA.
Yeah, MMA.
But I mean, to be fair, just because some people would ask, she because of her role in that sense, she has become a little bit of a controversial figure. So, she's definitely more complex than some of the characters you'll come across.
Okay.
Fabi, she just is another wonderful female wrestler. Her whole family's in wrestling, and her and Sexy Star had this rivalry that we got to see when we were shooting. They play against each other and their love affair. So they kind of bring the soap opera, but they're super tough and they're out there putting on amazing shows. And women are a big part of Lucha too. They were, Ian knows, he could explain the history a little better because they were really early on in Lucha and then it kind of stopped.
They were sort of banned in Mexico, and I mean, I think that's somewhat true in the U.S. that there was a reduction in the amount of female wrestlers who were getting sort of mainstream airtime until the 80s and 90s came along. But it was a little stricter in Mexico for a few years.
Oh, I love this. It was like fun. Just action shot of them going at it. They pull each other's hair. I mean, it's fun.
Oh my.
Well, this guy, 1000% Guapo Shocker, he's our lead in our movie for a lot of reasons. It started really because he doesn't wear a mask. He used to have a mask. He lost his mask because that's, again, we could go into it for hours. We don't want to bore everyone, but part of Lucha Libre is that some wrestlers do a mask against mask fight, and they basically sign a contract, say, if I lose, I'll get rid of my mask. So he lost his mask many years ago. So we met him. He was without a mask, super popular, very charismatic, spoke English. And I think you knew him before because he was in a lot of U.S. things.
I knew him. He had been in TNA in the U.S. And he had, at the time, seemed like he was going to be kind of a breakout star, but he wanted to come back to Mexico. He had actually, part of the reason his English is so good is because he grew up part in Mexico and part in the U.S. His family moved to California for several years, and he went to high school there. He was enlisted in the Navy, the U.S. Navy. So, he has a unique story, but also his father was a wrestler, and his father was running the arena in Guadalajara when at the time. So it was really in the family. Shocker's connected to everybody in the business. He knows everybody. He's been around, and he's a funny guy. He's a fun guy. He's a good friend. And his story really takes you through a lot of what happens to wrestlers, from a guy who's a young guy who's got his hopes up, and if you're lucky, you become this star, but then you're going to face hard times, which he did, both his own demons and then injuries he had. You see him here at this point, he's recovering from a major knee injury, and overcoming it. And he did overcome it enough to get back to the big time and be, in the biggest shows in Mexico, which is incredible. It's a great story. So Shocker really showed us a lot of this world.
Yeah, this is him when he made it back because he had to take 6 months off and start a taco shop because he didn't have any income, because that's the thing with Mexico that's very different than the US, I think, where, if you're not in a show, you're not going to get paid. And he relied on a lot of these independent shows besides working for this one company. He would work, as many days of the week as he could, sometimes 3 shows a day on a weekend. So anyway, this is when he's back on top and he's in the arena again. So it's a fun moment for us to get.
I mean, this is the anniversary show for Consejo Mundial, which is the equivalent of WrestleMania. This is like just an enormous show. So to be at the top of the card for a show like this, especially for a guy who has gone through what he's gone through, And he's done it a couple times. So, he's achieved a lot.
And now he's really injured again.
Yeah.
Someone broke his jaw, and so it's sad he now can't speak I shouldn't say he can speak, but unfortunately it's made it's impacted his life a lot. And so it's very sad to see. He's a dear friend of ours, and we've traveled all over Mexico with him. We've been like a bus, I don't know how many cities, all over. So
that's incredible. Not many people get an opportunity like that.
No, people can't believe it. They're like, you have all these like contacts on your phone. They're like you have Blue Diva, you could just call them up. And it's like, these are the stars and like superheroes to a lot of kids in Mexico. So it's really, we feel very honored that we really could be in their orbit and in this world. It's fun.
Sure. It's amazing. So we're going to also show some kind of background shots that you guys have shared with us from the film. So if you could talk a little bit about them, tell us, what's going on, what's happening. I think we have 7 or 8 photos to share.
Yeah, this one is, okay, so this is full capacity before COVID. Obviously now it will not be like this for a while. They're keeping, I think, half full. But so this was like an anniversary where 17,000 people can fit in this Arena Mexico, which is in Mexico City in the Colonia Doctores. It's an old neighborhood. It's been there for 50 years or 60.
It was built in the late 50s.
Okay, over 50 years. Well, 60 years.
Almost 70.
Almost 7 years, sorry, 70 years. And so anyway, this is the only arena in the entire world that was built for Lucha Libre, and it's the biggest one.
Well, wait, that's not entirely true.
Oh, it's not?
No.
What's the other one?
Coliseo.
Oh, yeah, there's the Coliseo, sorry. But that's smaller. It's in the centro. It's a different one.
It's not the original Coliseo, it's the second one. This is actually the third. This is built over the ground where the original one was, because the original arena they never thought Lucha Libre would become so popular, and they kept trying to expand on it and refurbish the thing and renovate, and they just got to a point where they were like, there's absolutely no way. So they, had the Coliseo, which is downtown in the centro, and then that proved to be too small and to not be able to handle it. And so then finally, Lucha Libre led to this.
Just one thing, Alex, this ring, so you see there's like a wall around the ring. When we started, there was no wall. Like the wrestlers would fall into the crowd, and the lights they've really dramatically improved the whole production value. Like when we first started, it was pretty rough. The lighting wasn't very good. Like I said, people could just walk up to the wrestlers and then they realized, okay, wait, we got to put a barrier. So this is a more recent photo from the film.
Oh, wow. The colors are amazing too, of the lights and everything. That's great.
Just more shots of a full house, so you get the feeling of like the obsession and it's all ages, little babies to older people that are obsessed, and they go every weekend. And there's 3 shows a week in Mexico City at this arena. Wow.
And they're all packed, I'm sure.
Yeah. Well, not now, but yeah, they were really packed.
Sure.
The fans are obsessed. They love it.
I mean, this is pretty typical. If you go, you're going to see people with
screaming.
Well, yeah, that, but also just all the merchandise and the beers and the chips and, I mean, you've got kids. It's not like a bunch of guys going out and drinking beer and watching wrestling. It's old women and it's little kids, and it's just everybody. It's very inclusive.
His mask.
Yeah.
That's great. Wow, what's happening here?
These actually are not from our film, but they're from our friend who shoots a lot of. He works for the Consejo, so they were just fun action shots of women just flying. So you can see like part of what makes Lucha Libre very unique is the aerial, the flying, high flying part that doesn't exist in other wrestling, and it's a little acrobatic. Euphoria. He's a great guy. He makes his masks, and he makes a lot of masks for a lot of wrestlers. So he does it on the side to make extra money. And he's a guy too. We don't really see him without the mask. And he was plays a bad guy in that world.
I would also add that he's not. we see him briefly in the film, but he's actually the scene. Some of the scenes with him in the key moments are on the DVD. They're actually part of a feature that we put together that includes a lot of stuff that, you know, obviously when you shoot as much as we did and you spend time with as many people as we did, there are some that don't
make the
fit
cut.
exactly, but you love them and you want to do something. And so there's some great stuff of him making the masks and, you know, going through what he was going through at that time as a wrestler and you know, just talking about the nature of having these kind of dual lives. So, yeah. Hi. Well, this is Fabian El Gitano, and he
Like this one.
you know, he was a friend of Shocker's, and Shocker introduced us. Well, John Strongman, actually, who was another friend that we met, who's in the film, an American that had come down. We went with him and Shocker to Fabian's gym, and you know, Fabian really was just the most incredible, friendly, outgoing, engaging kind of guy. He loved wrestling. He had been working really hard as a dancer and as a bodybuilder and all these things to kind of get himself in shape and doing, you know, whenever he could get to a wrestling show, he would. And he finally worked his way into being part of the roster at Consejo Mundial, which is a really big deal. And unfortunately, he was found dead not that long after we met him.
Yeah, I was soon into it, like, which is
Yeah.
a little frustrating because we were starting to get super close with him, and so that was like obvious, and it affected Shocker, affected a lot of the wrestlers too. Obviously, we're like devastated. So that again, these are things that kept like the film from taking longer because I mean, not that that's just part of like the world; it's real life, right? But it's also sad because we thought he would be a main character, and then it just kind of gets cut.
But this is the kind of reality that you end up realizing you're going to deal with. And it, you know, as we say with Hijo de Perro Aguayo, these things just keep coming up and you have to go along with it, even though it kind of, it weighs on you more and more, you know, and Fabian was bad enough. So yeah, it's really something we still think about a lot, and we think about him a lot.
And you said they just found him? They found
Well, the circumstances, I'll just leave it at the circumstances seem a little mysterious. They found him, he had been traveling for a show and they found him in a hotel room. And according to his family, he had a severe stomach problem and had a hemorrhage basically. So
That's awful.
yeah, it's very sad.
Yeah.
Oh, I love him. So we're showing a lot of the mask guys because again, they really take it seriously. This is Ultimo Guerrero. He actually now doesn't have a mask. He lost it, which was a shame because we loved his mask and we loved him. He's a real rudo bad guy, and he was super tough, really serious. He has a gym as well, a school for Lucha Libre, and he's a quite popular, I mean, people love him. But again, now he doesn't have a mask, which is a shame because he, you know, but it doesn't matter. I should say like this. Well,
no, he just had a great mask.
Yeah.
It was one of the
The
iconic
designs.
in this era of lucha. That's one of the iconic designs. And there are there's 2 or 3 other wrestlers who wrestle with similar masks, kind of as part of like his stable, you know, which is what you would call a group of wrestlers usually. So the tradition is being carried on. It's just he was so good at it that, you know, when a guy like that loses his mask, even though he's still a great wrestler and he's still got his following and he's still excellent in the ring, you know, you feel a little something is missing.
Do you think, because you guys have talked quite a bit about the masks, do you think just really quickly you guys could explain, I mean, what is this with the mask and how does it work and what happens when they lose the mask? Can they still wrestle? Do they wrestle without the mask? Can they get a new mask? What happens?
No. Well, no to the last question. You can never get a new mask. And guys who do try and go out with new masks usually get in a lot of trouble. They can travel sometimes to the US and find a second life there on occasion. There are some guys who've done that. But generally speaking in Mexico, it's an enormous, I mean, to even call it just like a faux pas or something like that would be an understatement. It's a major career thing. You've lost your mask.
Yeah, it doesn't happen often. Like Blue Demon Jr., the first wrestler you saw, the blue mask, whose father was a very famous wrestler, he would never put his mask on the line. There's some that just are never gonna do that. They're independents, but if you work for a company, I mean, I hate to say this, sadly, maybe they don't have a choice, or the company feels like they need to evolve. And so, you know, so they make it like a big event. So it'll be a mask versus mask match. And that happened with Fabian, actually, the man that we said was found dead soon into our production. Yes, him, he lost his mask, and it was devastating because it's literally like that was his identity and he didn't want to lose it. He lost the match, had to reveal his face, and it kind of soon after, I mean, not saying that's why, but we kind of felt like it was not good. And some wrestlers, it can hurt their career. But then for Shocker, for instance, it made him more popular. People loved him because he made himself fun, like the blonde hair, and he played with it, and he was charismatic. But some wrestlers don't succeed.
Shocker was also young. Some of the guys lose their masks a little bit older, and I think at that point the character is so much a part of them that it's a trauma. You know, just to very quickly get into it, the mask started because when Salvador Luteroth was, you know, initially doing wrestling, there weren't a lot of people in Mexico who were wrestlers. Yeah, he's the founder. He was the founder of Consejo Mundial, and he's really the founder of Lucha Libre. And he brought an American down, a guy named Cyclone McKay, and he was like, okay, I'll wrestle down here, but I'm not going to show my face because I don't want the guys up in the U.S. to know that I'm doing this. And so he goes and he gets a mask made. It's very plain. But the idea kind of caught on, and Mexicans who were taking interest in being part of this were attracted to that idea of I can have this dual life, you know, that I can be in wrestling and nobody's going to know who I am. I can go live a regular life. They really liked that idea.
And they became like real superheroes.
Well, yeah, because then all of a sudden you have guys like Santo and Black Shadow and people like that who, you know, later on Hurricane Ramirez and these guys are Mil Mascaras, these people who became these faces that were known, they were the masks that are known. And like Santo became the biggest star, and Blue Demon, obviously. And so that just took off, and that became what Lucha Libre was known for in a lot of ways. That was before the acrobatics even, which is, I think, now for a lot of people outside of Mexico, Lucha Libre is known as much for the acrobatics, but the mask is the biggest thing. It is absolutely the biggest thing. And, you know, yeah, it's a big deal to lose it. It's a big deal to you know, like to have it. It's part of their branding. It's part of their identity. It's a major thing.
Well, thanks for explaining it. It's so interesting.
I know. It's a lot to talk about, really.
No, it's fantastic. So here we have the film poster.
Yeah, this is our first poster festival, and it was fun. All these, actually, Ian's brother drew all these.
Wow.
Yeah, and so they're just fun. We wanted it to feel like comic, but also like superhero and fun. And this is sort of what a typical, not the drawings, but like what a typical lucha card looks like. So when you go, you'll see these all over the streets of Mexico City or all over Mexico, where they have all the names who's going to be on the show.
Great. Okay, so now we're going to actually show the trailer of the film.
Great.
Because we have it.
Awesome.
Yes. And maybe afterwards you guys can tell us a little bit about where people might be able to see the film in its entirety, because I know that everyone's going to want to see it after seeing this trailer.
Cool.
Okay. Give us
A lot of people want to become wrestlers. They see how famous you can be, but some people have a lot of talent, some people don't.
Es así. Dale.
La gente debe tener hambre para que pueda hacer las cosas. Siempre quise usar máscara porque es como una doble vida.
Si no fuera por la lucha libre, yo ya no estuviera en esta vida. I don't know of any other place in the world where they have a wrestling show at that capacity 3 times a week.
La carrera de un luchador o puede ser muy larga o puede ser muy corta.
I know that I have at the most 7 years, you know, a good career, so I got to take advantage of it.
Somos leyendas. Y las leyendas nunca se acaban.
Perfect. Well, thank you. So I'm sure that that's made everyone want to see the full film. So tell us, where can this film be seen, and what's the future of Lucha Mexico?
Well, in the US, you can see it on iTunes and Amazon. It was on Netflix, no longer, sadly. It was all over the world on Netflix, which was what made it so easy to, for people to see. But you can rent it in the US on Amazon and, like I said, iTunes. In Mexico right now, it's on Yo Mobile, which is a new platform. It's really neat, but it's not the great way to watch a movie on your phone, but it's sort of for the young generation.
People can watch a movie however they want.
But it's not.
We didn't necessarily think like, oh, you're going to watch it on your phone, right? So.
Right.
So you can watch it there. But we are actually we're going to be. Can you hear us?
The Yo Mobile is like an app on the phone?
Yeah, it's an app that you can download, Yo Mobile, like Y-O Mobile. And it's fun. So you can just see it there, and you can actually share it with people that way. And it's a way to communicate and converse. And we're working on trying to get it back to, not Netflix, because that doesn't happen again, but to Mexico, Amazon and iTunes. But it continues to play. Like we're really excited because next week is playing.
Oh, yeah, it's going to be in a festival next week. But also, I'd like to point out that it is available from Kino Lorber, which is our distributor in the US, on DVD. And that's where you can see the bonus feature. It's an hour-long, basically like an hour-long. I don't want to say second film exactly because we're actually working on a second film, which is a whole other issue, but it is in a sense like the missing hour, the lost Lucha Mexico, for lack of a better way of putting it. And it has a lot of really interesting little things about the history that we didn't put in the film, about the masks and about the arena and some of that kind of stuff. And it has some of the characters that didn't make it, or maybe some extensions of character, like little details about them that we thought were interesting. So, we always kind of like to point to that. So that DVD is available, and unfortunately, it's probably a little expensive as an import in Mexico, but we have seen it here, which is fun. And so then we're working on part 2.
Uh-huh.
And that's something we've had been shooting, and then the pandemic obviously put a bit of a damper on that. But we will be resuming that. We've shot a lot of stuff for it. We need to kind of fill in what's happened since then. The pandemic just shut everything down. It really did. And for a lot of wrestlers, it really hurt their careers, I think, because they were forced to look for other work. There was so little going on for several months there. And the major companies had to shrink their rosters by a lot. And so now when you go, you don't see quite the same variety of different faces just because they couldn't sustain it. But it's growing, it's coming back, which is a good thing.
It is a good thing. And part 2 is going to be, again, solely based in Mexico?
Yes, it's gonna go into other characters that we had followed, and it'll of course address a little bit of the pandemic, but pretty much bring you up to date to where things are. And if we ever could raise the money, we would do a part 3 in Japan. We always have dreamed of, like, you know, making it a trilogy, because it would really be fun, because that's another part of Mexican lucha which people don't realize. A lot of Japanese come to Mexico to be in the arena of Mexico. I mean, it's actually most wrestlers' dream to be there. So Japan tends to have this relationship with Mexico, which we always found weird and unusual, but at the same time makes sense. And when Mexican wrestlers go to Japan, they say it's the best experience because they go in and it's silent. It's the audience.
That's true. They clap, but they don't cheer and scream.
Yeah,
And
it's like no.
They wait in between little moments and they clap a little bit, you know, whereas you go to the arena and there's just screaming nonstop pretty much, you know, and they're waiting for those big moments where they can really let loose. It's the energy in that room is like, I mean, just nothing you've ever experienced.
Well, that would be amazing to see the Japanese compared to the Mexican fans and the whole show, how they.
The true dichotomy,
Yeah. So, well, one thing I do want to tell everybody that's watching is that this is just the first webinar in a series, as I mentioned, a series of events that AMSOC is planning for all of our community. So we're really excited because the next webinar, I think we said might be in May. We'll have to solidify the date, and we're hoping to have some of the luchadoras with us, right?
Yes. I mean, yes. Like, nice.
Well, it is nice.
No, it's going to be nice for that, because you get to really hear from them and be really wonderful.
Yeah. So I think that's something that people don't normally get such close access to them. So thanks to you guys and this amazing film, I think that's a great opportunity for people who are true fans, as you said, which is the majority of the country, honestly. Then we're also going to be having a follow-up event on July 4th at the American School here in Mexico City, where we're going to have a live lucha show. Right? You guys are helping us coordinate that. And then the final big event, we are going to show the film. So we'll have a live screening, and we'll have I don't want to give away too much information, but towards the end of the year, a very, very large lucha event, right?
Wonderful.
Yeah.
We're super happy about this, to celebrate 80 years for you guys. And also, I think it's a great in to Mexico through this, like, very popular sport that's having this sort of renaissance, really, because, you know, I don't know, you need to sort of experience this world, you know, to understand that, like, I don't know, this beautiful culture, I guess, you know, or folklore or whatever. But
well, it's a little bit of a lot of things. It draws in a lot of different influences and inspiration, and it covers a lot of things in Mexican culture, but it also appeals, you know, if you bring an American to come see a show in Mexico, it opens their eyes, you know, like people who maybe didn't have any real interest. We've seen it happen. We've been there with those people, and they're just like, I had no idea it would be like that, you know? It's very exciting.
What do you think are like the major misconceptions, just to wrap up, but what do you think, you know, what are things that people that didn't grow up with lucha that maybe think and that are totally off?
that was the first thing, was the campiness, really.
Yeah, well, the campiness, I think Alex could probably talk to that more, because that's something I already was way beyond.
Because Hugh knew a lot about it, but I went in thinking it was this kid, and it can be silly. Like, obviously, there's a comedy, right? There's several matches in a show. It'll always start with some, like, the young novieros, the young wrestlers who are trying to get their name out, and so they're not very good. And it's like, again, like a bullfight. You start with the young guys and women, and then it goes to like a funny match, and there's humor, and that's the campy thing that somehow has gotten shared to the US and the world, that it's like silly, you know. And so again, once you're in there and you see a real show, which is obviously what we'll invite everyone to go, and it's way different. It's serious. These people are talented. It's a real, you know.
Well, I think that ties into the other thing that's the biggest misconception. People use the word fake. Wrestling's not fake, and they love to use that as a way of putting it down. It's, maybe you could say, a stunt show. you could say that aspects of it are sort of choreographed, but that's not the right way of looking at it either, because these guys usually don't plan much of a match beforehand. They usually go, well, we'll probably get to this point or that point. Most of what you see is stuff that through their training and their experience, they're skilled enough to be able to do on the spot. And one guy knows how to react to the other guy and back and forth to create that. So in a sense, it's a stunt show. It is a sport. It's a performance. It's entertainment. But you can't fake jumping off of a ring and landing on a guy. That's not fake. It's not, you're seeing him do that. They're just trained to know how to do it and do it every night without killing themselves, hopefully, So there is a reality there, but you have to give yourself over to it. And once you do, you understand that everybody's in on it. Everybody in that crowd knows exactly what they're there for. And everybody in the ring knows the show they're putting on. So it's very honest and it's very connected to that audience.
Wow. Al, anything?
I just feel like, I think the film's a fun way to really see like the variety of the world of Lucha Libre. And, it's a traditional thing that is fun to really understand. It's a family business too. It's something you don't see as much in the US. And I think the Mexican people can also feel like they can go and touch their heroes, where in the US, again, they're very removed. They paid millions of dollars. The Mexican wrestlers are not, they're not, only very few, like Blue Demon, people who have a crazy merch and that come from like movies. But anyway, but that's, that's what it is. So it's not like, it's the same as American like wrestling in that way.
Mm-hmm. Well, I know everyone can't wait to see the film, and I want to thank you guys so much for being with us today. I know you're traveling at the moment.
I know we're in a hotel, but yeah, we are traveling. We're in San Luis Potosí. We're scouting a new film we're working on. So we're thrilled. Thank you for having us.
Yes, thank you for having us.
Safe travels, and we look forward to seeing you at the next event.
Same here.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.